The Girl Who Never Left It started as just another quiet evening in a small town where nothing much ever happened. But for Sarah, a college freshman who had just moved into her off-campus apartment, that night would mark the beginning of something she could never explain, something she would never forget. The apartment was old, but charming. Creaky floors, peeling paint, and the scent of dust soaked into the walls. It had history. That's what drew her to it in the first place. But sometimes, history refuses to stay in the past. On her second night there, Sarah noticed something strange. A light flickering in the hallway. A faint knock on the door. Whispers, not loud, but just enough to make her stop what she was doing. She shrugged it off as nerves, or maybe the old building settling. But the feeling of being watched? That wasn't so easy to ignore. Especially when she found a note slipped under her door. No name. No explanation. Just 6 words, she never left. Don't trust them. Sarah didn't know anyone in the building yet. The landlord barely spoke. And her only neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Langley, warned her gently, almost too gently, "You'll hear things. Best not to listen too closely." As days passed, Sarah uncovered pieces of a story the town had tried to forget, about a girl who once lived in that very apartment. A girl who vanished without a trace. But some say, she never really left. They say she's still there. Watching. Waiting. And one night, as Sarah reached for the light switch, she saw something that made her freeze in place, a shadow standing perfectly still in the corner of her room. But when she turned the light on, there was nothing there. Or was there? Sarah stood there for what felt like forever, staring at the spot where the shadow had been. Her heart was racing. She tried to tell herself it was her imagination, a trick of the light, maybe even her mind playing games after a long day. But deep down, she knew what she saw. That shadow had shape, had presence. And it wasn't hers. The next morning, she tried to go about things as usual. Made coffee. Opened a book. Even went for a walk. But the uneasy feeling wouldn't leave her. Every creak in the floor made her jump. Every whisper of wind brushing against the windows sounded like someone breathing. She kept thinking about the note. She never left. Don't trust them. Who was she? And more importantly, who was she not supposed to trust? Later that day, Sarah ran into Mrs. Langley again in the hallway. The old woman gave her a look, a mixture of concern and something else she couldn't quite place. "Don't stay up too late," she said quietly. "Things feel different at night." Sarah wanted to ask more, but Mrs. Langley had already turned away. Curious and desperate for answers, Sarah spent her evening searching online. She typed in the apartment address, hoping for clues. Buried deep in some forum thread, she found a name, Emily Carr. A student who went missing 5 years ago. Last seen in the same building. Same floor. Same apartment number. No suspects. No leads. No closure. There was even a blurry photo of her. Sarah stared at it, chilled to the bone, not just by the story, but because Emily looked a lot like her. That night, the air inside the apartment felt colder. The lights dimmed without warning, even though the bulbs were new. As Sarah walked down the hallway toward her bedroom, she saw the reflection of someone behind her in the hallway mirror, but when she turned around, no one was there. She tried to sleep, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. At 2:14 a.m., her phone buzzed. One new message. No number. Just one sentence. Why are you in my room? Her hands trembled. The room was silent. But someone, was still there. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat up with the light on, staring at her phone, reading that message over and over. Why are you in my room? Her mind raced through explanations. Maybe it was a sick prank, maybe someone had the wrong number. But she hadn't given her number to anyone since moving in. Not even the landlord. The next morning, she went straight to the leasing office. The door was locked. A handwritten sign taped to the glass read, "Out of office. Back Monday." It was Thursday. Frustrated and uneasy, Sarah walked back, pausing outside the building. Something about the windows of her apartment, dark, still, made it feel like she wasn't just living there anymore. She was being kept there. Back inside, she opened the closet where she'd found a box of old books the day she moved in. She hadn't looked closely at them before. Most were dusty journals and random notebooks, but tucked between them was a worn-out diary. Its pages were brittle, the handwriting faint. The name on the inside cover made her freeze. Emily C. Sarah began reading. The entries were scattered, but one thing was clear, Emily had started feeling the same way she did now. Strange noises. Unexplained drafts. The growing sense that someone else was in the room. Emily had even written about Mrs. Langley. How she always seemed to appear when something strange happened. How she warned Emily not to poke around too much. Sarah didn't know who to trust. She thought about going to the police, but what would she even say? My apartment might be haunted and someone who went missing years ago is texting me from the beyond? It sounded insane. Still, she needed to talk to someone. She called her friend Jason, someone she hadn't spoken to in a while but trusted. He agreed to come by the next evening. That night, the apartment felt heavier, like the walls were closing in. As Sarah read further in the diary, she found a final entry, written in shaky handwriting. They think I'm gone. But I'm still here. Watching. Waiting for someone to hear me. The lights flickered again. And from the other room, she heard a voice. A girl's voice. Whispering her name. She wasn't alone anymore. But the question was, had she ever been? Jason arrived just before sunset the next day. Sarah hadn't told him everything on the phone, only that something strange was happening and she needed help. The moment he stepped inside, his smile faded. This place feels off, he said, rubbing his arms like he'd walked into a freezer. Sarah just nodded. She didn't need to explain anymore. The apartment spoke for itself. They sat in the living room, lights on, windows open to let in some air. Sarah showed him the diary, the note, even the text message. Jason flipped through the pages slowly, pausing at the final entry. You think she's still here? He asked, not sarcastic, not mocking, just quiet and serious. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. The house had already spoken. Later that night, Jason offered to sleep on the couch, just in case. Sarah felt a small sense of relief having someone else there. But that peace didn't last long. Around 3 a.m., the smoke alarm went off for no reason. They both jumped up, checking the kitchen. No smoke. No fire. Just a cold, silent apartment. When they reset the alarm, the lights in the hallway began to flicker again. This time, in a steady rhythm, like footsteps. Sarah and Jason stood still, listening. Then, the sound of knocking. Not at the door, but from inside the walls. Soft at first, then louder. Coming from her bedroom. Jason moved first, slowly turning the knob. The room was empty, but colder than the rest of the apartment. Sarah stepped inside, heart pounding. That's when she noticed it. The mirror. A crack had formed along the corner, one that wasn't there before. She stared at her reflection, and for a moment, she wasn't alone. A second face, just behind hers. Pale. Still. Watching. She turned around fast. No one. But Jason saw it too, just for a second. We need to get out of here, he said, grabbing his coat. But when they tried the front door, it wouldn't open. The lock twisted, but the door stayed shut. Jason even tried kicking it, but nothing worked. Then, they heard it again. The voice. A whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once, "Don't leave me." Suddenly, every light in the apartment blew out at once. Total darkness. Sarah grabbed her phone for the flashlight, but the screen flickered and died. Jason's phone wouldn't turn on either. They were trapped in complete blackness, with only the sound of their breathing, and something else. A soft creak, like someone stepping closer. Sarah reached for Jason's hand, but her fingers touched something cold. Something that wasn't him. A moment later, Jason whispered, "Sarah, where are you?" But she was right beside him. Or so she thought. Sarah froze. Her hand was still outstretched, her breath shallow. Whatever she had touched wasn't Jason, it felt wrong. Too cold, too still, like a hand that hadn't been warm in years. And then it moved. Just slightly. Just enough for her to know it was real. She let out a sharp gasp and backed away, bumping into something behind her. A whisper brushed past her ear, "Stay with me." She turned, but there was no one. Just the sound of footsteps fading down the hall, though neither of them had moved. Jason found her again by the bathroom door, both of them now shaking, whispering in the dark. "Something's messing with us," he said. "It's not just haunted. It's alive." Sarah nodded, too afraid to speak. She tried her phone again, and the flashlight flickered on for a second, just long enough to see what had appeared on the wall in red, smeared letters, "You look like me." She dropped the phone. Jason reached for the wall, touching the letters. "Is this paint?" he whispered. But the way it ran down slowly, thicker, darker, it didn't feel like paint. They backed away. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the apartment. Then another. Then three more in rapid succession, like fists pounding from the inside of the walls. The entire apartment began to shake, not violently, but enough to feel like the building itself was trying to breathe. They ran to the window, thinking they could break it, climb out if they had to. But what they saw outside made their blood run cold. The street was gone. Where the neighborhood should have been, cars, trees, lights, there was only fog. Thick, unmoving. The window showed the same thing no matter where they looked. It was like the apartment had been pulled somewhere else. Somewhere it didn't belong. Jason whispered, "We're not in the same place anymore, are we?" Sarah shook her head slowly. The rules of time and space no longer seemed to apply. The apartment wasn't just haunted. It was a trap. She remembered something from Emily's diary. A passage she had skimmed before but now echoed in her head, "She doesn't want to hurt you. She wants to become you." Sarah's hands began to shake. The whispers, the mirror, the cold touch, it all started making sense. This wasn't just a ghost. This was someone, or something, that didn't want to be remembered. It wanted to be reborn. Jason grabbed her arm. "Look," he said, pointing toward the hallway. A door had appeared. One they hadn't noticed before. Cold. Wooden. Scratched, like someone had tried to claw their way out, or in. And it was slowly opening on its own. From the other side, they could hear breathing. Not their own. Not human. Something was waiting. And it had been waiting for a long, long time. The door creaked open, and for a moment, everything went completely still. No breathing. No movement. Just silence so deep it pressed against their eardrums. Sarah held Jason's arm tightly, her heart pounding so loud she was sure it could be heard. A cold wind rushed from the doorway, and through the dim light of Jason's flickering phone, they could see it. A figure stood inside the room, pale, thin, her face partially hidden by tangled hair. But the eyes, they were wide and unblinking, filled with something far beyond sadness. It was Emily. Or what was left of her. Sarah stepped forward, her voice shaking. "What do you want?" Emily didn't speak. She only raised a hand and pointed to Sarah's reflection in the cracked hallway mirror. And that's when Sarah saw it, the face looking back wasn't fully hers. Her features were changing. Subtly. Slowly. Becoming someone else. Emily. The apartment wasn't trying to scare her. It was trying to replace her. Suddenly, Jason pulled her back. "We have to destroy the mirror," he whispered. "It's her anchor. She's using it to stay connected, to stay here." Without thinking, Sarah grabbed a heavy bookend and hurled it at the glass. The mirror shattered instantly, sending shards across the floor like falling ice. A high-pitched wail filled the room, shaking the walls. Emily's form twisted, her face contorting, then dissolving into a cloud of shadows that swirled upward, screaming, then gone. The lights returned. The fog outside lifted. The apartment felt lighter, still old, still creaky, but no longer cold. It was over. Or so they thought. A week later, Sarah packed her bags, ready to leave for good. As she reached the front door, she paused and glanced into the small mirror by the exit. Her face looked normal, until she smiled. And the reflection didn't. It just stared back. Still. Silent. Waiting. Sarah stared at the mirror for a long time. The smile that didn't belong to her faded slowly, almost as if it knew she had seen it, acknowledged it. She blinked, stepped back, and the reflection corrected itself. But something inside her stayed unsettled. Even as she locked the apartment door for the last time and walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that a piece of her had been left behind, or maybe, something else had come with her. Jason helped her move out. They didn't talk much about what happened. Every time they tried, the words felt heavy, like speaking them out loud would somehow bring it all back. He asked once more before she left, "You sure you're okay?" She nodded, though the truth was more complicated. She felt lighter, yes, but changed. The apartment had left a mark, not just on her memory, but on something deeper. A week passed, then another. Sarah returned home to her family for a while, trying to adjust, to feel normal again. She donated Emily's diary to the local library under an anonymous name, hoping it would be enough to give her story a place to rest. But some nights, Sarah still woke up to whispers she couldn't quite make out. Dreams of mirrors. Of empty rooms. Of being watched. She read more about the building later. Turns out, there had been other reports over the years. Cold spots. Vanishing pets. Sudden illnesses. But nothing ever stuck. No real answers. Just stories people didn't want to believe. Just like Emily's. Until now. And maybe that's what the apartment really was. Not just haunted, but hungry for forgotten people. Girls who disappeared without reason. Lives that were erased quietly. It didn't just hold ghosts. It held the ones no one remembered. Now, Sarah did remember. And she would keep remembering. Before she fell asleep each night, she checked the mirror in her room. Just for a second. Just to be sure. And every time, she hoped to see herself staring back. Only herself. Because sometimes, the scariest part of a haunted place is what it leaves behind with you.